So, welcome to another A to Z of writing language learning materials. Today, we're going on a slightly different tangent from our usual writing based topics. We're going to look into the world of book selling and selling the things that we write. And to speak to me today, I've got somebody called Nick. Nick, can you tell us about who you are, what you do?
Hello, John. My name's Nick Edwards. I am the Director of Operations here at Bournemouth English Book Centre. BBC has been distributing language schools with their materials for 51 years, and we are a third-party supplier. We purchase the material from the publishers, from all major publishers from around the world, and we distribute to private language schools, universities, and colleges all over the world.
Now, if you've ever been to a UK-based conference, you quite possibly will have seen Bournemouth English Book Centre stand on it, and Nick and a few other people there. And I've met Nick quite a lot in the past, but one thing I don't know about you, Nick, is how you actually got into your job.
Okay, it was actually very random. I was very good friends with the managing director's son, and 15 years ago, I was working actually as a printer,
Okay.
and so I was asked to help out in the warehouse 15 years ago. Because there was actually an untimely accident to one of the staff in the warehouse, so
Okay.
they needed some cover in the warehouse. So I started part time, and then within 6 months, I noticed that BBC, although been around for 35 years at that time, had no social media presence. Well, they did, but not as much as it could be, especially in this ELT world in the UK and Ireland. And so I managed to work my way up from working in the warehouse, picking and packing materials, to a sales and marketing position, and enhance BBC as a social media platform on all the platforms.
Okay. I'm
Yes.
interested because I thought you were going to say something like, well, I taught English for a couple of years and then I moved to that. So you had no ELT background.
ELT background.
And do you think that actually some people watching this might think, well, how could he sell it? But maybe that gave you an advantage, did it?
It really did. One thing I really enjoyed about working in the warehouse is you got to see what the best-selling titles were and going out on a daily basis. You understood kind of buying patterns from a lot of the language schools. And also, once you're in the warehouse and you're seeing what's going on a regular basis, you take more notice of what you're selling. And over time, obviously, going to conferences. I was working there about a year before I got into the kind of sales and marketing events and going to exhibitions on behalf of BBC. And I went into sessions and I understood what I was selling by going to these sessions to see the different variations of teaching and teaching practices. And I kind of understood what I was selling and how the kind of model of teaching works. And yeah, I just needed more experience.
You mentioned that you, from the warehouse, you understood the buying patterns of a school. So what would be an example of buying patterns in terms of...
Um, it's so obviously predominantly our turnover is UK and Ireland. We obviously have supplied outside the UK and Ireland for 50 odd years, but that is our core clientele. And as people will know in the UK, the this summer is the big money maker for a lot of language schools. And so I understood the buying patterns there that schools would particularly buy in preparation for a big cohort of students coming in the summer. So I was understanding that. I was understanding that a lot of schools would also purchase in December before a price increase in January. So you were understanding how the schools were purchasing, why they were purchasing, and just understanding what they were actually doing. Were they keeping lots of bulk stock for walk-in students? You understood some schools were using class sets, some were buying books for a student. So, you understood from each language school and university and college we supplied what you would expect from them on year on year. And so those buying patterns very rarely changed until COVID.
Okay. For this interview, I asked people on social media to send me in some questions. So I got a few questions. So
Okay.
some of these are mine, some of these are other people.
Okay.
In no particular order. There was one that we got. It's sort of, and I think a lot of these came from possibly from writers who were thinking about self-publishing as well. But
Okay.
let's take the question as it is. So somebody said, let's assume that you have what you consider is a good ELT book,
Yes.
and maybe you look at it and think, oh yeah, this looks all right. But however great it might be, or not so great,
Yeah.
what else goes into actually selling a book? Because it's not just the content, is it?
No, 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 no. It's not just the content. Although, every self-published author would hope that the content is the reason it sells. It's all about you as a writer, the presence you hold in social media, whether you go to events and exhibitions and do sessions. Are you, focusing your material on a particular area of the ELT industry? And what really helps is boosting you as a self-published author. You start promoting yourself. A lot of people in this industry buy from people. That is the number one thing in this industry. Yes, of course, there's many course books that sell because of the name and because of the brand, but especially somebody that's self-published and it's maybe a brand new book, they've never done it before. You have to get out there and, as a bookseller, we do not determine what a customer buys. That we can offer the discounts, we can offer very quick service, but it's how you as a self-published author can promote yourself on social media to direct particular teachers that are interested in that particular area of the industry, whether it be AI, whether it be greener material, how to work with, there's so many different variations in the ELT. And if you are going to publish your own book, do a lot of research, from the amount of books that have sold in that particular area. What do you want from it? That's the number one thing, because self-published, creating your own materials, especially methodology, where a lot of materials are now even not even in print, they've gone to digital. If
Hmm.
you're going to create something that is in print, where are you focusing this to? What kind of area with an ELT? And then what BBC would do, once you know your niche market, or once you know where you're going to target, BBC can, with our very huge data that we've piled over the last 50 years, we can promote it, we can target areas that would, or even teachers. We know that we work with, Nile and these teacher training centers that would like something in their center that they may not know about it. And when BBC promote it to 10, 20,000 people that are on our mailing list, that's when it might spark a bit of interest. Always good to have sample pages, PDF units, just to showcase what is available within the book. But pushing yourself to a good stature on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, and let your customer base know, or your future customer base know what you are producing, and then BBC can do the rest and really help promote your material going forward.
Okay, I think you answered another question there from another teacher
Okay.
called Mon JC, who said, how can self-published writers work closely with booksellers? You've partly answered that. You did mention a keyword, which I think is interesting when we talk about pricing, because pricing and how books are sold and what are the margins on books is something, it's a bit of a dark art, and it's something that writers will they'll be thinking, look, I've got my self-published book, I'm going to sell it for £20.
Yeah,
But like when I worked with you, the first thing you wanted to talk about, well, I've got to offer a discount.
of course.
So how does all of that work in terms of the breakdown of if you've got a book, which I'm saying it's going to sell for £20,
Yeah.
what goes on in your mind in terms of how you're going to price it and discounting and all of that?
Okay, so I mean, there are many distributors around the world that will mark up books. We always sell the book that is marked up by the publisher. So we
Sorry,
never.
when you say they mark it up, so if I'm saying the book's for 20, they're going to sell it for 25. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
there's many distributors around the world that will mark up to increase their margins. We only sell at list price that the publisher or the self-published author has given us. So the way that my brain kind of works around is we are categorically giving discounts to all of our customers. Our new customers, when they sign up on our website, will always get a 10% welcome discount. And then if they buy bulk, they can get in touch with us. And we're not in a situation where the more you buy, the better discount you get. It's all about, once we work together, I understand how you want to work and vice versa. We come to an agreement, and you have to factor in when you're writing a book, you have to factor in the printing costs, the hours that have gone in from the author to create this material, the printing costs, which have increased a lot in the last 6 or 7 years, especially since COVID. So you factor in what you're going to also give away and a margin that you would like to work on to make sure that you, as a distributor, are making some money from this. So you always got to work out what the printing costs are, and then whether you're a brand new author, you may want to pump some money into some advertising and those kind of things, which BBC has the option for. But the way that we look at it is we work on a particular margin and we make sure that we continue that margin. Otherwise, we don't make money. So we've got to look at all the crux of it, delivery costs, all these you have to take into account. But we categorically, most of our customers give between a 15 and 27% discount. So we need to make sure that we make a margin, and we need to work with the self-published author to agree on something where we're both making money.
Right. So if somebody comes to you with a book and says, I want to talk to you about getting you to sell it, one of your first questions is going to be, well, how much do you want to sell it for? What other questions would you typically ask them?
Well, most of the time it's, do you see a market? Because we have many authors that have been in the ALT industry for many years, and they've gone down the route of self-publishing. But you've got to be able to, there's no point producing a book where you only send 5 copies. You need to make sure that you're writing something that is not just going to be used in 1 or 2 language schools. It can be used in every language school, because most language schools will have a library, and that will be a library for students and a library for teachers. And if you're, especially in the UK, if you want to become British Council accredited, you have to have this kind of library to showcase to them that you have materials and methodology that a teacher can pick up and grab and learn from and teach from. And so we will always kind of advocate for people that want to self-publish. They've got to do their research first, because you could spend a lot of time, a lot of effort creating something, and then you only get 5 copies sold. There needs to be, because over the years in this industry, there's been hundreds of thousands of books that have been created in the last 50 years, for ELT. So it needs to be something that has a little bit of meat on the bones.
Great answer. Question from Amina. Are there particular seasons and times of the year which are good for books, which might slow a launch down?
Oh, summer. If you're going to release a book, you either look at before summer, maybe I would say March or April. So it gives, especially if you're doing a course book, if you're creating a course book, that's what you would like to get in, because course books obviously make publishers and people like us a lot more money than methodology. And so if you're writing a course book, you want to start getting that prepared before summer, February, March, April, when you want to start promoting it. And also, don't release anything towards the end of the year, because most of the time from January onwards in the new year, the prices increase. So, prices of public and also everything goes up, inflation, everything. So, there's many reasons I wouldn't produce something, in October and look to try and get it out in December and then make a decision in January that you're going to increase your price because paper prices got up, printing costs have gone up. So there are particular areas, but yeah, I wouldn't produce anything in midsummer. That's definitely a one.
Um, right, I could see the summer logic. We remember
Yeah.
we're talking about UK and
Yes.
Ireland,
You can Ireland, yeah,
so Northern Hemisphere.
of course.
But and a lot of that's I know that course books have to be ready at the time you've talked about. Is that so true with methodology books? I mean, if I was just writing it as a self-publisher, presumably I could be a bit more flexible.
Yeah, yeah, but the from my experience, the language schools have very little time during summer
Right.
to then, if we did a mass promotion on a brand new methodology book from a self-published author, are they going to take as much notice as if they would in the quieter times when they actually read the whole newsletter that we send out as opposed to what's on offer for summer because we've got hundreds of students coming in and we're trying to find teachers, we're trying to get them all into class, get excursions prepared. So even if you create a methodology, I still think there are certain times within the year that more people would take notice as opposed to in peak summer.
Tell me, I've often wondered because obviously we know the UK IATEFL
Yeah.
conference is always in April. Do you notice a spike after that event, or is it?
Yes and no. I mean, that event is mainly for teachers, and so it's like anything. If you go into a shop and you see something you want to buy it. You sometimes you lose that interest instantly if you have to go and buy it online. And a lot of people, especially at ITEFL, would like to buy it because they're viewing it in front of them and they can pick it up and actually have a look, as opposed to I mean, there's not many books nowadays that you can go on Amazon or I don't want to say those words, but you go to BBC or the Amazons or even the publishers of the world, and you cannot really see what that book holds. It might have a unit, it might have a PDF of the scope and sequence or something, but it's not really the same as picking it up. So when you're at ITEFL, we sell a lot of books at the conference. For the week after, we have a special promo code, so people are using that promo code to get the discount, and then after that, it kind of tails off a few weeks afterwards. So it's mainly the event is more of a face-to-face event that people should go to and see fantastic speakers all week.
Yeah, I mean, I was just interested by it as well because when we self-published and promoted the book this year, lots of people said, "I'm going to wait because I want the paperback copy." And I wondered whether it's a methodology book thing that people like to have the hard copy on their desk to pick up and read as opposed to other types of books. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we're noticing that now. I think where you've had so many methodology books that have been created over the years by all major publishers, now it looks like because they don't sell as much,
Yeah.
a lot of people would prefer a digital copy, but actually, a lot of teachers I speak to much prefer a print copy. It's on their desk. They can pick it up whenever they need. They don't have to go searching through their iPad to look for it. They can pick it up. They know what unit they want to go to, and they can grab those ideas from that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we've sort of seen 70-30, 80-20 in favor of hard copies, which
Yeah,
surprises me actually, because it's
yeah.
more
Well,
expensive than the e-version,
of
but people
course.
want it. Yeah.
Of course, I think the digital era is among us, but I still think we have a lot of teachers that prefer the physical book, which is good because it keeps me in business.
Good. Another question from somebody was from Kath, actually. Have you noticed any trends in the kinds of books that are popular recently?
Trends. Well, I mean, AI is a massive trend. There's not a lot of books out there for AI at the moment.
So if you put AI on the cover of your book, that would help, yeah?
That would help. That would
Okay.
really help. No,
Right.
it really. I mean, we Delta Publishing created a book, the AI literacy in the
That's
classroom.
right. Joanna's
Joanna's book,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that We could have sold probably 100 copies at ITEFL,
Wow.
but it wasn't even produced.
Did you tell her that?
Well, it wasn't. The funny thing is, it wasn't produced in time for ITEFL. So we
Uh,
had sample copies, but then what happens, like I mentioned earlier, unless it's there in front of you afterwards, it's gone from your train of thought, and you don't just go and buy it
no,
online.
that fully supports what you were saying about
Yeah.
timing and having it
It's
ready and time
it's
to
so
the.
important. But yeah, AI, the greener side of ELT, that's got definitely got meat on the bones there. Sustainability, they're the kind of trends that are going on at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, here's an interesting one. Have you ever refused to sell a book for any reason?
Never refused to sell a book. We've
We
had
sell anything.
I would never refuse to sell a book unless they were the customer wanted it for a lot less than let's say they wanted more discount than we get from the publisher. Other than that, no, we've never refused to sell a book. Publishers, as you know, John, you've worked with many publishers over the years. Some stuff will go out of print, and we don't get massively notified there and then. So we may have a book that's in stock, and once it's exhausted and there's no more stock, we can't resell them. So we have had to buy copies from elsewhere just to satisfy customers that are buying old materials. But we've never refused anyone from buying a book. No.
Right. Last question we got time for, which I was asked. Somebody was interested in um, future opportunities for new titles, and you've sort of mentioned some of the buzzwords, though
Yeah.
they may change, but you'd expect what some of them that you've mentioned would continue.
Yeah.
But final question, really, just assessing the future of ELT books, book selling in your format. You've been going over 50 years, and I remember speaking to your boss at one conference, and he expressed surprise that people were still actually buying books. And he said when people say I'm going to publish another book, he's still surprised that they're going to do it. But here we are,
Yeah.
2025,
Yeah.
and people are still buying books.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on the next 10 years?
Oh, that's a tough one, John. I mean, there's nothing more than I would love schools to continue buying print books. Obviously, since COVID, I think that's accelerated the digital world. It really has.
Mm.
Even the first year, during COVID, because there was a lot of teachers that were teaching online, they were getting used to certain platforms and they were understanding, oh, I don't need a teacher's book. I've got access to all of this on a particular platform. But if I was a student and if I went to a language school and spend lots of money, I would expect something to show my parents, that they've paid for me to, I've got a physical book. I'm at A2 level. Look, parents, I've moved up to a B2 level in the last 6 months. And here's the proof, as opposed to here's an ebook. Here's it, you can the digital era is not going to go away. It's only going to get stronger. But I don't know. I mean, I would love to say in 10 years' time, books are still going to be sold, and the whole blended learning is a fantastic way to continue. But I AI worries me. It really does, because I think that it is going to get better and better and better, which may put a lot of pressure on distributors like us and even publishers. I think that the AI will, in 5, 10 years' time, be really scarily good. And yes, that could, but I think if students going to travel to the UK or Ireland or anywhere to learn English or another language, I think we need more feedback in the next 5 years from what the student actually felt there and then. Did they enjoy? Because students are 18 years old, they're on their phones 24/7. It takes them away from that. And an actual practical way of learning is using a physical book. I don't know how you're going to do handwriting on your iPad. Those kind of things are very much needed still in the print world. But yeah, in the next 10 years, I hope print, and so do you, John, and so do we all. We hope print is still in, Still going strong in 10 years' time, but I couldn't predict. I couldn't predict.
Fabulous. Thanks very much, Nick. Really great
That is no
speaking to
problem.
you as ever.
Very
Full of
much.
lots of interesting comments and lots of, as well as answering the questions, other things came up. And if people drop anything into the comments, further questions or comments, I might come back to you if there's any further questions, if that's okay.
That's no
Thank you.
problem. Thank you very much, John.